So the Premier League season is over, and I'm sure everyone's already caught up with the transfer rumors of the summer transfer window. Trust me, it's gonna happen. And some fans may be celebrating the end of the year, while others will also be celebrating the end of the year, just for wildly different reasons. But regardless if you think your overall season was a success or not, there's at least positives for everyone in the league. So we're just going to be complimenting every single club in the Premier League, just giving out some good vibes, and we're going to be starting with these guys. Just really making me go straight to work here. Now, I don't want to make it sound like the season was successful in terms of the Premier League. You at least could argue it was in the Champions League, but in an injury-riddled season, they found that they could rely on their defense. Now, yes, it was obvious that Arsenal needed a striker and that they needed reinforcements in the attack, so not buying a permanent attacker was definitely a miss. On the other hand, they had 7 players require some type of surgery during the season. What the f***? It doesn't really matter how many people you buy. If 7 people are out because of injuries that need surgery to fix, your season is going to suffer, not to mention all the relatively long-term injuries that didn't require surgery, like Odegaard, Martinelli, Calafiori, and Marino, just to name a few. There are certainly some things they could work on, like dropping 21 points from winning positions this year, which was more than the previous 2 seasons combined, but while some of those were because of bad mistakes, others were just because of injuries. The league season was a disappointment for Arsenal no matter how you look at it, but I can at least compliment the fact that they still could rely on their defense, gave up the least amount of goals in the league, and they had a solid Champions League campaign. So hopefully I can also compliment their striker that they buy in the summer. It is so obvious, please buy a striker. Villa have been on an upward trajectory ever since Unai Emery took over, but after getting Champions League last year, they were a bit unlucky and just missed out on Champions League football, even though they had just 2 points less than the previous campaign. Regardless, they've re-established themselves as a solid club in England, who have fought for the top 4 the last 2 years, and if it wasn't for taking over Villa when they were 13th, Emery could have gotten them potentially another top 4 finish. In fact, since Emery took over, they've been 4th in the league table, something that surely exceeds expectations for the club and the manager since he took over. Now, it's going to be tough to take that next step into challenging for titles and consistently finishing in the top 4 just because the top half of the league is so strong, but at least at the moment, Aston Villa and their fans should be pretty happy with how everything is currently panning out. Bournemouth had a solid season, one that I think most Bournemouth fans would have taken at the very start of the year. Challenging for Europe, lots of good young talent. I mean, it was one of the best seasons for Bournemouth in recent memory. Without any context, at least. Unfortunately, they ended the season on a terrible run with only 1 win in 9 matches, including losses against Wolves, Ipswich, and Brentford, and all of that happened after a 13-match run with only 1 loss against the champions. Realistically, they should have been fighting for a Champions League spot. However, if you want a non-Bournemouth fan opinion, I know you don't, but you're gonna get one anyway, the overall season was still very, very good. Now, I know how a disappointing run-in can feel. I mean, I've been scarred by them the last few seasons. But things have genuinely never looked better for Bournemouth fans. After all, you've been increasing your point total every season since being back in the top flight. You tied your highest ever finish, and you got your highest ever point total in a Premier League campaign. As long as you can continue to find some quality young players like Dean Howson that can sell for major profit, you will surely be fighting for a European spot soon. Brentford has always been a great example in recent years for how smaller clubs should be operating. They use analytics to help sign players for cheap and eventually sell them on for a significant fee while building a decent squad in the process. Now, while the gap is growing between Championship and Premier League clubs, Brentford have done a tremendous job staying up and improving. they've once again finished in the top 10 and nearly equaled their highest point total ever, all while having a solid attacking partnership that didn't feature Ivan Toney. Well done to Brentford, and I gotta say, I do have a little bit of a soft spot for them because they made me look like a genius when I said that they would stay up in their first season and then get top 10 in their second season. So, keep doing what you're doing. It makes me look smart. Brighton are in the same boat as Brentford, another great example of how to operate as a smaller club. After a shaky first few years in the top flight, Brighton have become a consistent top 10 team who regularly competes for a European spot, even being able to snag a top 6 finish one season. This season, they got 8th and only got 1 point less than their highest point total ever, but what really continues to impress me is how they find all of these ridiculous wonder kids and then sell them on eventually for like 100 million, right? It's like they're playing Football Manager essentially. Like their last starting 11 had 5 players aged 21 or younger. Now they did have a poor run of form in December that saw 0 wins in 8 matches, including blown leads against Leicester and Southampton, but it's also worth mentioning that they only had 9 losses, which was tied for the 3rd least in the league. They play a fun, attacking, entertaining style of football, and so if they can just tighten up their defense just a little bit, they could be a very, very dangerous team. I think Chelsea showed glimpses of what they've been trying to build the last few years by snapping up young talent and either developing them into great players or selling them on if possible. The first half of the year, it really looked like Chelsea would be challenging for the title, but inconsistencies and young players showing their inexperience put them in a fight for the Champions League. And all of that is highlighted by a 12-match run in all competitions without losing, including a dominating 3-0 win over Aston Villa, following that up by 5 winless matches in the league, including a loss against Ipswich. However, that type of inconsistency is to be expected when you have the literal youngest squad in the Premier League. Like, literally their oldest starting 11 is younger than everyone else's youngest starting 11. Now, it was definitely a gamble for Chelsea to offer all of these insanely lucrative contracts to these unproven, talented young players, but they are starting to show their young talent because not only did they get wins to the end of the season against Liverpool and Nottingham Forest, but they made it into the Champions League and they won the Conference League final against Real Betis as well. They also have Estevo joining this summer, and apparently he's so good that a certain Brazilian is willing to ensure accidents happen to the owner if he gets messed up, and that he should be a part of a core that Chelsea can build around for a half decade. It seems like Chelsea could be back, and I'm not gonna lie, I am not looking forward to it. Say what you will about Crystal Palace, but they are consistent. Very consistent. Ever since their first season back in the Premier League over a decade ago, they've finished between 10th and 15th and ended with a point total in the 40s every single time. But they have finally cracked the 50-point mark and ended this year with 53. In that time, they've also had some solid players like Balassi, Elise, Eze, Zaha. I mean, for a club that's never won any major silverware, that is pretty.
FA Cup winners 2025.
They have finally done it. This could be the breakthrough for Crystal Palace. After all of these middling place finishes, seeing talented players leave time and time again, not only have they won some silverware, but they'll be competing in the Europa League, their first major European competition in their history. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how a mid-table club handles the grind of a European competition, but if they can capitalize on the sales of some guys like Elise for 50 million, Anderson for 35 million, they're going to be in a good spot, right? And, you know, maybe they can get some high-end players on loan as well. I think I might know a guy. Everton is just the beast that cannot be slain. It doesn't matter how many mistakes they commit, how many awful transfers they make, or how many terrible ways their former owner can screw them over. They always find a way to survive. It was definitely a season of two halves for the club, as Sean Dyche was only able to scrape 17 points from the first half of the season, but after Moyes came in, he nearly doubled the amount of points from the second half of the season, getting 31 points and ending with a total of 48. Now, I've always thought that the end of a season's form is a good indicator of how they'll compete the following year, and while it's not always a good judge, Everton ended this season with form that would have them fighting for top 7. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not, but we've seen crazier things occur. They also have Jordan Pickford, who's, a bit of a crackhead, but what goal he isn't. They also have Ndiaye, who did all right in his first Premier League season, and they also have Dwight McNeil, who I feel like he's a beast. Like, I don't know if that's true, but I feel like anytime I watch him, he does well. Can anyone confirm if he does good? I don't really know at this point. But best of all, Everton finally has some new owners that look like they actually care about them, ending the long and disastrous reign of their former owner, who looks like a villain mixed with a sexual deviant. So hopefully it's nothing but an upwards trajectory for the club. Seriously, it looks like he's plotting his next evil plan while mentally undressing his coworker. Like that is not okay, my guy. When I was looking at Fulham's league placements over the past decade, I was very surprised by how long they stayed in the championship, because I always thought that they were a Premier League staple. Now, once they've gotten back into the Premier League, they've been trying to re-establish themselves as a mid-table club. And this season, I think they've really done that. This was their third consecutive season finishing mid-table, and they got 54 points, their highest point total since... Wait, was this their highest point total ever? Okay, no, wait a second. They were in the Europa League. Like, they made the Europa League final. What the hell happened? I mean, I guess this is one of Fulham's best seasons ever. Congrats to Fulham on that. Yeah, okay. Oh, and Anthony Robinson is the best left back in the league. Honestly, I think a lot of people expected Ipswich to go down fairly easily, and, they kind of did. But I think a lot of people had them firmly in last place, and if I'm being honest, they kind of impressed me a little bit. Ipswich would start these games extremely well, routinely going up against a surprising number of clubs. Man United, Chelsea, Wolves, Aston Villa, Fulham, Bournemouth. They were winning in all of these games. Does that mean they deserve to stay up? Not necessarily, but they've also been unlucky with injuries this season, having the third most days lost to injury and the fourth most injuries in general, resulting in the most changes to a starting 11 per match and the most overall changes in the league. When that happens to anyone, let alone a newly promoted side, you're going to suffer a bit, so it might be fair to kind of cut Ipswich a little bit of slack. But that also makes Delap's season even more impressive, essentially carrying Ipswich's attack on his back. It's been very difficult for newly promoted sides the last few years, and that doesn't necessarily negate all of Ipswich's problems, but maybe they did get a little unlucky. Okay, hang on, hear me out. I know it was a poor season for Leicester. I'm not sure why Van Nistelrooy did the things he did, like benching Buonanotte when he was one of their best players. There was an 8-match losing streak with 0 goals scored and 21 goals conceded, and your last 4 matches earned 7 points, which was more than your previous 20 matches combined. What I will say is that you gave Vardy a proper Premier League send-off, something that he truly deserves. Plus, I mean, you're going to get him off your books as well, and he's the highest earner at your club, by a pretty fair margin as well. Hopefully with some of that money, a rebuild around some of the younger players like El Hanous can provide a more stable future for the club to prevent a yo-yoing situation. Most importantly though, you got good scran, right? And you may think that that's a joke, but being from the United States where everything is expensive related to sports, especially the food, I am always going to point out some good scran. Shout out to Footy Scran on Twitter, and shout out to Leicester's sausage roll for being only £4 in absolute steal. No one can take that from you. I mean, you won the league, Salah had one of the most record-breaking seasons, and Slot starts his Liverpool era off in style. there's not really a whole lot else to say. I mean, it's kind of easy to compliment the league champions, right? I hope that doesn't come off as bitter or anything as an Arsenal fan. Liverpool fans will regret the day that they chose to do this. You guys went on one of the worst streaks in recent memory, especially in your history, with only 1 win in 13 matches, including 9 losses. It was genuinely horrific for a club as talented as yours, but there's still some good news. You guys still managed to finish in the top 3. You guys still managed the 2nd most number of wins in the league. Haaland is still scoring for fun. Marmoush has added great ability to the attack, and the academy is still producing insane talent for you guys to use or sell on for millions of pounds. A trophyless season is not the end of the world, and it'll make those trophies that you do win even sweeter. At least that's what I keep telling myself. So yeah, it's you're fine. You're so fine. So let me just get a couple jabs out of the way first, please. Oh, God. Oh, God, that's good. This was your worst season. Like, truly, this is rock bottom. No European competition, no solid plan going forward, lots of deadwood. But that does mean a few things. One is that the only direction you can go is up. Like, I sincerely doubt that it will get worse, and the fact is, you'll still be able to sign lots of people. Basically anyone you want that isn't in a European competition, as evident by your Cunha signing. Like, Manchester United still has that big name attached to it. Second, you have Bruno Fernandes. He'll either continue to carry your club until his back inevitably collapses, or you can sell him for a stupid amount of money to the Saudi League. And if I'm being 100% honest, it might be better to do the latter so you can do a very good rebuild. Third is that you still have a few young stars. Mainu still has all the potential in the world, and Diallo decided to be your second in command behind Fernandes, breaking out and having a solid campaign despite an injury in the middle of the year. Now, this is going to be a little different for United because while they've needed rebuilds in the past, they've always papered over it, and now they have to do a rebuild because they've essentially hit rock bottom. But if they can trust the board and have a little patience, I'm sure they're going to be back to their former selves. I hope not. I really don't think it could have gotten much better for Newcastle this season. Although finishing in a Champions League spot is very difficult nowadays, you could argue they were predicted to finish top 5 because they didn't have any stress of European football. Plus, with Isak being looked at by other clubs, finishing top 5 was perhaps necessary to keep him around. Not only was that task accomplished, although in rather lucky fashion given how the final day played out, they also ended a 56-year trophy drought by winning the Carabao Cup. Bar Liverpool and Crystal Palace, I don't think that there was another club that had as good of a Premier League campaign as Newcastle. Who's next? Oh, that's Nottingham Forest. Well, okay, so Nottingham Forest also had an amazing season comparable to Newcastle. While Forest fans might be disappointed that they aren't going to be finishing in a top 5 spot for Champions League football, I'm sure every fan of the club would have taken a top 7 finish before the season started. To go from staying up because the clubs below you were just truly that awful to being a single point away from Champions League football is nothing short of astounding and truly miraculous. In a Premier League season that wasn't as interesting as I initially thought, they helped make it at least a little bit interesting. So thank you, Nottingham Forest. Now, it may seem like there's nothing to compliment Southampton about, but you have a very good young talent in Mateus Fernandes. I mean, it's not every day you see a 20-year-old be the star of a Premier League club in their very first season for said club and in the league. Regardless if Southampton were bad, that's a very good performance for such a young player. Now, I'm not sure if he has a release clause or if he'll want to even stay in the championship to begin with, but there's positives in both situations, and it's something I can genuinely compliment Southampton about. Plus, at least you didn't get the lowest amount of points in a Premier League season, right? Like, it sincerely could have been worse. You didn't lose any matches 9-0 again, you didn't become the worst club in Premier League history, and you're getting Premier League money as you go down. Like, you'll be richer than a lot of other championship clubs, so at least there's that. Now, I think we could all agree that it was a very, 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 very bad season in general for Tottenham, right? We can all agree on that. But one thing and one thing alone saved it: winning the Europa League. I'm not sure how you did it, given the fact that you were 17th in the Premier League and the fact that pretty much every single player in the squad was injured. Like, you were rolling up to matches with the ball boy on your subs list, okay? Like, I think I even saw them holding community tryouts to fill the starting 11. And Big Ange, someone that I kind of have a soft spot for, ended up fulfilling his promise of winning a major trophy in his second season. And I know I'm supposed to hate Spurs the most. I obviously don't like them winning, but United is who I hate much more, and seeing them lose brought me so much joy. Well done to Spurs for winning the most important match of the season and essentially dissolving all of your sins for a truly pathetic and horrific campaign. An aging squad that's the second oldest in the league, stars being sold in recent years, up and down league finishes in recent years. What's a compliment I can give them? Jared motherfucking Bowen. In the last 4 seasons, he's gotten at least 20 goal contributions in all competitions, and in 3 of those 4 seasons, he reached those numbers in just the Premier League alone. And I know that Wan-Bissaka was a stud for you guys too, okay? Quick shout out to him for regaining his form, but Bowen? Remember when I said Delap was involved in nearly 40% of Ipswich's goals? Bowen was involved with 45% of West Ham's. The entire attack, the entire club goes through Jared Bowen, okay? Lindsay's right, they need to rename the stadium after him. This is how the table looked after match week 16. Wolves are sitting in 19th place, second to last, after conceding a 94th minute winner against relegation rivals Ipswich. That was the match that sacked Gary O'Neill and brought in Vitor Pereira, who went on to get 33 points from the last 22 matches, a rate that would be equal to 57 points in a full season, which is good enough for 9th place. Now granted, I don't know much about the Wolves manager, besides the fact that it's his 14th club, in his 8th country in 20 years, and also the fact that he has been said to have clashed with former players and that his former team was happy to see him go. However, any man that's able to drag a team to safety after getting just single-digit points nearly halfway through the season is good enough for me. Well done to Wolves for taking a risk on a guy who has never managed in the league before, because it absolutely paid off. So that's it for the entire list, but there is one more compliment I feel like I have to give out, to Leicester specifically. How did you manage to get through wearing this kit? Let's just say you could block out people throwing insults at you, right? That takes a lot of mental strength, so good job.